First, thanks everyone for coming out. And as you can see, standing with me and beside me are law enforcement leaders on the local, state, and federal level for this press conference on this afternoon. I'll begin with saying this: 16 alleged high-ranking members and leaders of the Gangster Disciples have been indicted on federal racketeering charges. The Gangster Disciples is a gang responsible for distributing large amounts of narcotics as well as committing kidnappings, robberies, aggravated assaults, and murders. This indictment is the result of Operation 38 Special, an extensive investigation into the Gangster Disciples based in the Memphis and Jackson, Tennessee areas. This particular investigation began nearly 2 years ago and is ongoing. Now, in addition to our district, even as we speak, alleged Gangster Disciple members have been arrested in the Atlanta, Georgia area, in federal court in the Northern District of Georgia. These individuals are also being charged with federal racketeering charges, among other offenses. The Gangster Disciples have a nationwide reach, reportedly present in at least 35 states. The gang is organized into different positions, including board members and governors, assistant governors, chief enforcers, and chief of security for each state or regions where the Gangster Disciples is active. And there are coordinators and leaders within each of these local groups. In essence, the organization is the epitome of organized crime. And this is why we're employing the federal RICO statutes to dismantle the organization at its highest levels. The defendants named in the indictments allegedly partook in the distribution of large quantities of heroin, cocaine, and marijuana. They also committed assaults, kidnappings, and tortures and attempted murders of individuals they believed to be rival gang members. One occurrence involved several of the defendants allegedly shooting multiple times into a residence they believed housed several rival gang members with the intent of killing those inside. Among other offenses, the defendants committed in furtherance of the Gangster Disciples enterprise and to raise funds for the gang were firearms trafficking, intimidation of witnesses and victims, extortion, and obstruction of justice. This morning, agents arrested 15 of the defendants listed in the West Tennessee indictment, and one defendant remains a fugitive. And those already apprehended are scheduled to appear this afternoon before U.S. Magistrate Court Judge here in Memphis, as well as in the federal courthouse in Jackson, Tennessee. All 16 defendants are being charged with racketeering conspiracy, as well as conspiracy to distribute and possess with the intent to distribute cocaine, cocaine base, and marijuana. The RICO conspiracy charge in this case carries a maximum of life in prison. 5 of the defendants have also been charged with 7 counts of attempted murder in aid of racketeering and 7 counts of using a firearm during the commission of these violent offenses. Now, as the indictment alleges, these individuals flooded communities throughout the Southeast and beyond with large amounts of drugs, and they also brazenly used fear and intimidation and even murder to promote and to protect their nationwide criminal enterprise. We will continue to work with our law enforcement partners to eliminate the terror that gang members inflict upon our communities, and we will continue to exhaust every available resource, including the RICO, the federal RICO statute, as in this case, to bring these individuals to justice. Dismantling gangs at the highest levels remains a priority for the U.S. Attorney's Office, and I know I speak for the individuals, my law enforcement partners that stand with me on this afternoon. As I mentioned, this investigation is ongoing, and our work is not done. I want to again thank all the law enforcement partners for their dedicated efforts in this investigation. As you can imagine, this has been over 2 years in the making. A couple of things I want to point out with regard to this investigation, that here in federal court, there have been over 40 indictments of Gangster Disciple gang members. And with my law enforcement partners, General Wyrick, General Donovan, the state has charged nearly 90 individuals, Gangster Disciples. What's significant about this case is that we're using the RICO statute, the federal RICO statute, to bring the leaders of these organizations. to justice. And this is something, just to show you the significance of the violence, we have not used the RICO statute in this office. The last time we did this and used this particular statute was in the Craig Pettis case. If it gives you any semblance of how violent these individuals are and the fact that they are leaders of this organized criminal enterprise. So that's significant. Our work is not done, but we will continue to, again, bring those individuals to justice that continue to wreak havoc throughout our communities. I want to, for remarks, and we'll take some questions, but before that, I want to introduce remarks by David Jaffe, and he came in from Washington, D.C. He's with the Department of Justice Criminal Division's Organized Crime and Gang Section, and he's the Deputy Chief there. So, Mr. Jaffe.
Thank you, U.S. Attorney Stanton. The indictment today is testament to the dedication and diligence of the prosecutors and the investigators whose representatives stand here with me today in battling violent crime in Memphis, Jackson, and beyond. The case reflects a sustained team effort to bring gang members and associates to justice for their years of violence and narcotics trafficking since at least 1996, as alleged in the indictment. Violent crime threatens the safety and security of our communities, and that threat is far more significant when it's done by organized groups as part of a pattern of criminal activity. And gangs like the Gangster Disciples are such a threat to the safety and security of our communities because, among other things, they are organized criminals involved in sustained, directed criminal activity. And at the very core of law enforcement's mission, we are working to combat gang violence and ensure that everyone feels safe in their homes and neighborhoods. It's a hard reality that in many communities across the country, they do not enjoy the sense of security because of the Gangster Disciples and gangs like them. In part for those reasons, that's why the indictment today is so important, in that it does charge the leadership of the Gangster Disciples, the governors, assistant governors, chiefs of security, and enforcers, the people who were organizing the criminal activity and giving it direction. The indictment alleges a broad conspiracy involving these shootings, attempted murders, narcotics trafficking, and obstruction of justice. And it's that obstruction of justice that helps instill fear in the community and really prevents people from coming forward sometimes and reporting crimes or serving as witnesses. As a result, it can take months or years for investigators to develop sufficient evidence. And it often requires significant efforts to identify, encourage, and protect very reluctant witnesses. The Organized Crime and Gang Section at DOJ, with our partners at the U.S. Attorney's Office, and all the state, federal, and local investigators involved in this case have more or less overcome those obstructions and obstacles, and now made sure that the 16 gang members and associates have been charged in Memphis with racketeering activity and racketeering crimes. We look forward to working with all of our partners, not only to prove this case, but also hopefully to uncover further criminal activity by the Gangster Disciples and their associates. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also want to commend, I see again, the multi-agency gang unit and its members for their work with this. Also the prosecutors, the federal prosecutors in this case, Jerry Kitchen, Sam Stringfellow, and Beth Boswell, who's in our branch office in Jackson, Tennessee. They've done phenomenal work, and again, this doesn't happen. It's just without, again, a tremendous amount of cooperation and collaboration with individuals that you see here, but of equal importance, those that you don't see that's been on the ground literally for the last 24 months, doing their best to take some violent, very violent offenders off the streets. Having said that, we'll take some questions.
We've heard that the indictments include an Atlanta area police officer. Is that correct?
I can't confirm that. I know it's more than 30 individuals have been indicted, and so I can't confirm. I'm not sure whether or not that includes a police officer.
How many states or jurisdictions are involved?
I can tell you multiple jurisdictions on today. Only thing I can tell you is that the Northern District of Georgia and the Western District of Tennessee are the only two jurisdictions that are announcing RICO indictments. But I can tell you the investigation is ongoing. We're not done, and that multiple jurisdictions are involved with this takedown, of leaders and high-ranking officials of this very violent organization.
What do law enforcement officials do to determine who's a member and who to arrest?
Well, we look at their activity, we look at their conduct, and with the RICO statutes, their participation in furtherance of the criminal enterprise often dictates those individuals that are charged, as in this case.
Who are you all looking for? Who's that other person out there? You have a name or who he is?
Until he's brought, he's a fugitive, I can't answer that question right now.
You mentioned 40 and 90 indictments. Can you put those in a context of time? I'm not-
Since the investigation began, this investigation literally began 2 years ago in May of 2014. We look at every individual on a case-by-case basis, and that's where General Wyrick and General Donovan and our federal colleagues, we look to see who we will take in which court. And so, again, roughly 90 have been taken on the state side. I believe 43 here prosecuted or indicted here in federal court. Again, I want to stress the significance, though. Today's individuals are high-ranking leaders of the organization, and that is why we were able to employ the not so often used but certainly effective RICO statute.
Yeah, and can you talk a little bit more about them being leaders within the organization? Because certainly we know this is a national crime enterprise. So can you talk about, I guess, the prevalence here in Tennessee and how big our local, I guess, sects of these, help me, I'm sorry.
These individ-
Yeah, our local groups are on the wider scope of the national.
Well, you know, I'll tell you, the indictment somewhat speaks for itself with regard to the structure. I can't go into the full scope of the investigation, but what I can say is what we know is it's a very detailed, very structured organization, whether it's dues, whether it's reporting up the food chain, if you will, governors and assistant governors and leaders, chief enforcers of security. And these individuals, yes, they've been right here, leaders of a nationwide criminal enterprise right here in West Tennessee, as well as in northern Georgia and beyond. And so these are, again, individuals that are allegedly calling shots and making leadership decisions as it relates to the criminal enterprise.
So is it the hope that by taking out these leaders that we can hopefully start to disband some of the local groups here? Or I don't know how this normally works. When leaders are taken down, do they start immediately looking for the new leader?
Well, the answer is it's not an either or. I'd say it's a both and I think all of my law enforcement colleagues would agree, whether it's the low-level gang member or certainly the leaders that are involved with the indictments here as well as in Atlanta, that we're going to remain vigilant for these individuals that continue to wreak havoc in our community in a very violent way, up to and including murder and attempted murder, that we will use every resource we have on the state side as well as the federal side to bring them to justice.
Where was the home shot with the rival gang members and which rival?
I believe that was in Jackson. That was one of the, there were a number of shootings, but where's Jerry or, okay, yeah. Was that, am I confused? That was a shooting in a residence in Jackson, Tennessee.
Are there any sort of higher profile crimes here in Memphis that you believe these 15 people participated in?
Well, you know, anytime there's a shooting, that gets our attention, and any one shooting is one too many and high profile enough. I can't go into the investigation outside of what's in the indictment, but I can tell you that, yes, a number of crimes that you may have seen or that may have been stated within the media and covered are part of the individuals' activities that are indicted today.
And how does this particular gang factor into the widespread violence here in Memphis?
Well, again, we're taking some not only violent individuals off the street, and not only here in Memphis, but in Jackson. And what we have seen, too, there's no question that a number of these leaders we've seen that have migrated from the Chicago area and from other states. And again, they're transitory, so whether between here and Atlanta and throughout the Southeast. But the fact is that we're taking leaders off the streets, so individuals that are making decisions, calling shots to subordinates. It is really an organization, a very detailed organization, and again, it's, as I mentioned earlier, it is a criminal enterprise, the epitome of organized crime.
What would your message be to someone who lives in one of these neighborhoods that's been, you know, that have been overrun by a gang like the Gangster Disciples? What would you say to them? You know, what does this mean today to them going forward?
That we hadn't given up. Our job is not done, and we won't stop, and I say we because it is a collective effort. While many are sleeping throughout, and again, it's not only the people that you see standing with me today, but it's the men and women, the officers and the agents, that every day they put their lives on the line to bring individuals such as these indicted today to justice. And so, block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, we would say to those individuals that engage in this criminal and nefarious conduct, that you won't get away. Ultimately, this is the end result. And to those individuals in the community to understand that we're staying steadfast and vigilant, we're bringing these individuals to justice.
I guess, Director, and you can share, what's being done from your standpoint as far as making sure this doesn't happen again in these gangs off the streets? Speak to that.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. The concerted effort of state, the concerted effort of state, local, and federal officers here in our community will continue. The men and women of the Memphis Police Department and the Shelby County Sheriff's Office and all of the municipalities will continue to pursue street level, mid-level, and upper level, and do all that we can to make sure that those individuals are brought to justice. And it's the men and women on the street, as General said, who are out there risking their lives every day and doing a great job, and they will continue to do that, and they certainly have our support.
Yeah, and if I could just circle back, I can't remember whose question that was, to the people in the community. Well, we say, the other thing that I would say is if you see something, say something, that we can't do this alone, and I say we law enforcement, that we need, for those individuals that you know and that you are aware of that are committing these acts, to serve as our partners as we have to do this together. And so, again, I think everyone would agree that we need you to step in the gap as well as we combat this issue collectively. I don't know if
To answer your question specifically, you said for this not to happen again. I don't think that's our plan, is we're going to continue to work together with our law enforcement partners to rid the community of gangs, drugs, and guns. So again, we're lucky in West Tennessee. We work very well with our federal law enforcement partners, our county, other municipal agencies. So I think it highlights the great things that are going on in West Tennessee and how we cooperate with each other. So I want to just thank the U.S. Attorney's Office for putting this together, the multi-agency gang unit, Shelby County Sheriff's Office, the DA's office, and all of our law enforcement partners. But it highlights our commitment to the citizens of Memphis, that we're not going to stop, we're not going to give up, we're going to go after these bad guys, we're going to make the community safer.
Director Rawlings, what's the impact of these indictments for the city of Memphis?
Well, I mean, I think today, to measure the impact today at this hour probably be a little premature, but we know that as we attack, these high-ranking gang members, we're trying to dismantle gangs. So again, my hope is that it will make the community safer, but it's a message to these individuals that are running with these gangs, that are wreaking havoc, that we are coming after you.
What are some areas where these gang members hang out? South Memphis, Frazier?
all over, and I think, yeah, that's a good question. All over, and sometimes, again, they're transient. But what we've seen is, in this case, as the attempted murder charge, that was in Jackson. So sometimes people feel that they can go to the rural areas or the smaller towns to hide out, if you will. And again, I think today's indictment underscores that no place, you can run, but you can't hide. The scope of this, the RICO charges here, and again, the effort of law enforcement to weed this effort out in the community.
Talk to me about the trickle-down effect. When you have communities or neighborhoods that are being overrun by gangs, some of the long-term impacts that we can see, the negative impacts, when it comes to drugs being sold on the streets, and violence out in the open.
Yeah. Well, that's why the ultimate goal is to cut these individuals off, organizations off at the head, because these are the individuals that are given the charges to intimidate, to obstruct justice, aggravated assaults, as the indictment alleges, instructing individuals to murder other individuals or rival gangs or competitors in the drug trade. And so that's why it's so important, and that's why, again, while we've had 90 on the state side and over 40 on the federal side, that's why today is so significant, because we are literally cutting off, we believe, a big step, rather, in cutting off this violent criminal organization at its head.
Was there one specific crime or one specific incident that led you all to open this investigation? Was it information maybe you got from a gang member? I mean, how did this investigation started?
A combination of all. To answer your question, Adrian, no, it wasn't just one incident, but a number of issues that we saw, criminal conduct and acts by this particular gang.
Is 2 years pretty standard, not 60 years?
Again, as you can imagine, these are not easy investigations, particularly as you work your way up the food chain to get literally in the midst of this organization and to understand how they operate. And again, it's not just here in Memphis, but we're talking about nearly 35 states that we're aware of that their ties to, this gang has ties to. So it takes as long as it needs to take to make sure that we have the evidence and the what we need to bring these types of charges. And I think it's important, again, to say that we're not done. We are not done. The investigation continues. I think Lewis is telling me we're done. We are done. All right. Thanks, everybody.